Welcome to MMA Oddsbreaker, ladies and gentlemen. Frank Trigg here in Las Vegas, still in the process of moving. Sam Stout, still up there you're in London right now, right? Where are you? Every time I talk to you, it's some
Yep,
different
London,
place.
Ontario.
Okay, all right. Are you still going down there and training in Boston some?
Yeah, I didn't head out to Boston for this one. All the guys at my gym were getting ready for fights, so for me to leave them was kind of, would have hurt them, and there were so many guys getting ready here. I didn't really see the point to go to Boston this time.
How's training camp been?
It's been unbelievable. Having a great camp. Other than the little bump in the road with the opponent change a couple weeks ago. It's been great. On my end, haven't had any injuries, haven't had any problems. Been getting lots of good sparring in. Like I said, all the guys at Adrenaline are all getting ready for fights too. So lots of guys to work with. It's been great.
You're fighting in Winnipeg at UFC 161. You're fighting against James Krause on a 2 week notice. He's the kind of guy that takes fights on 2 week notice. He's always kind of in shape. What's different from your original opponent to fighting James now?
Obviously James Krause is 6'2". I was preparing to fight a guy who was, 5'9", about my size. So that's a big difference. But their whole style is different. James likes to keep guys on the end of his jab, throw his high swing kick, reach over the top for guillotines because he's so tall. If he gets into close quarters, but he's got a lot of submissions on his record. He's he's got a pretty respectable record, 19-4. As far as I understand, he was already training for a fight, so I can expect him to come in shape for this one. Yep. And I think I got my hands full with him, and he's not somebody I'm going to underestimate just because he hasn't fought in the UFC before.
Does he do anything differently that you've seen from any one of your other opponents? Has he kind of got elements of a bunch of different of your opponents kind of combined in one?
He's really good at keeping that length, keeping it, and he's a tall guy who uses his reach well. Sometimes you see tall guys that don't necessarily use their reach, and he's not one of those. He's good with his jab. You really got to stay on the move with him. You can't just stand in front of him. Or you look at his last fight against Toby Amada, and he just butchered him with that jab.
What problem will that cause you? Because you don't jabs really don't bother you, but you've never had somebody this long dealing with you on that jab.
Yeah, the tallest guys I've fought haven't been 6'2". I fought Terry Etom, and I fought Paul Taylor, and they were both closer to 6 foot, 6'1". It's tough. It's difficult fighting taller guys, and there's some things I'm gonna need to make sure I do. I'm gonna have to move my head a lot. I just can't stand and be. I can't let him get his range, because if he gets his range, that means I can't even reach him. So. I got to take that away. I got to be aggressive, and close the gap.
Do we see this fight being a lot more against the cage because of the height difference, and you've got to be a lot more aggressive to get inside that?
Well, there's a danger there too, right? Like I said, it's really easy for him being so tall to reach over the top for those guillotines, and in his fights he's comfortable in that clinch position and up against the cage. So I got to be careful there too. But that's definitely something you could look to see me doing. Nonetheless, I think, as long as I'm ready for those to defend guillotines and Darce chokes, I think it might be a good place for me to be.
You seem to fight in Canada, and you always seem to have the hometown advantage, no matter where you're fighting. This one's in Winnipeg, which isn't home, but Canada's still home. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, do you think the hometown advantage is going to be big? In America, when it's America versus anybody else, there's always that USA chant. In Canada, You don't really get the Canadian chant, but you definitely get the cheers for the Canadian fighter. Are you gonna have more of a hometown advantage over Krause?
Yeah, it could for him, especially the fact that this is going to be his first fight in the big show. His first fight in the UFC. I think the fact that the crowd's going to be on my side clearly. Might get in his head a little bit. If he's smart, he's preparing for that, and it's not going to faze him too much. But, I'm used to being, not being a really hated fighter. Whether I fight in the U.S. or Canada, I've always got a pretty, if I'm not getting cheered for, at least, I'm rarely ever getting booed by people, right? But I'll tell you, when I fought in Brazil, when I fought Tavares, and I was walking out, and the first time I really heard people hating me and booing me, it did get in my head a little bit. So, if the crowd's going to start doing that to him, it might get into his head. There's a whole lot of factors that are going to make him getting in the right mindset a little bit more difficult in this fight.
You are such a nice guy. Your persona in the ring is the same as your persona outside the ring. Like you're just a nice guy. Do you think that hurts you a little bit when it comes to endorsements and getting bigger name fighters and bigger name fights? Because like you see guys that are playing the heel role right now in the UFC are talking themselves into bigger fights, and you're kind of being muddled around and stirred around in the middle group right now.
I think it's definitely, if I were to go out and get into Twitter battles with people and be a little more outspoken, then sure, I'd probably get a little bit more of a hype train going behind me. But that's just not who I am. I'd rather build the hype around me by the way I perform in the cage. It's just not me, to be honest. So it's possible it's hurting me a little bit in sponsors and stuff, but I'm not going to change who I am just to get a couple extra bucks.
Last question before we let you out of here. Other than your fight, obviously, what's the next fight that you want to really see that's on your card?
That's I'm gonna have to say, the Henderson fight. Henderson and Rashad. Every time I see, Dan Henderson is probably my favorite fighter. Just from the time I was a kid, younger. I got a chance to train with him when I was. I just first started to fight in the UFC. I went out and stayed with him, actually, trained with him in Temecula. He's a guy who I have more respect for in this sport than just about anybody. He's an old school cowboy type, and he's a man's man. So I always like seeing him come out and throw him down.
Beautiful. That's my favorite fight too. Of course, I've been friends with Dan for almost 20 years. So it's been for me. It's a big deal to watch this guy. He's older than me too, and he's more broken than I am, and he's more beat up than I am. But yet somehow he seems to win a lot more than I do. It's very strange.
he's unbelievable, man. He's a cowboy.
Yeah, he finds a way around it. Doesn't care. Finds a way around it. So, well, thanks, Sam. Good luck at UFC 161 up there in Winnipeg, and I'll be at home watching you on TV. As always, I love watching you fight. I love you, no matter win, lose, or draw. I always like the way that you fight. I always do like the way that you hold yourself in the ring as well as outside the ring. So, as a fan, I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
Take care, bud.
Take care.